You can't hate on somebody that you're trying to inspire to do better. So I think that's the hater they trying to call you when you're trying to help them do better. There's no way a person could hate on you if they're trying to genuinely help you do better. So if I'm throwing a ladder for you, there's no way I can be hating on you. If I'm trying to teach you the stock market, teaching you investing, there's no way I could be hating on you. But there are people who could be, like she said, subconsciously, they could be hating in the sense of they don't like the way they look, even though they have all the money. They may not like the way they look. Yeah. So they could still be jealous of you because you could have characteristics. You might be likable. Yeah. They might not be that likable. So that way, yeah, you can be a hater. But I know the one you were saying was the first one, when it was like you're trying to help somebody. You tell them like, yo, if you keep smoking every day, you're not gonna have money. And I'm like, it's just logic. But again, that's what they consider hater because it's also a defense mechanism. They have to deflect truth. In order for them to continue a bad behavior, I tell you, they have to believe it. So whatever they're doing, they have to believe that this is not the problem.
Welcome to the Don't Let That Go Over Your Head podcast, starring Q the Boss.
Yo. Welcome back to another episode of Don't Let That Go Over Your Head podcast. They call me Q the Boss. And today I'm very excited. I got a dear friend of mine. She comes from a very long place. To the left of me, we have Miss Sharika McDonald, guys.
Myself a round of applause. Hi, guys. How are you? Namaste.
Namaste. Listen, but today we're definitely talking about why are people so afraid to be vulnerable? Why do you think that it's such a problem in our community?
I think several reasons why. I would first like to say the meaning of the word or the definition of vulnerable. Vulnerability is exposure, right? So that is kind of it takes on a negative connotation sometimes just because there's an unwritten feeling that something bad is going to happen, and it doesn't always result in that. But that's been in our culture, that's always been the response to vulnerability.
Wow.
So it's very hard to back away from that actual, feeling, because that's something that we've always been. With exposure, people in our community could lose their lives. They could lose everything that they have. So it's not an easy task to now reprogram yourself to be vulnerable when it could be the one thing that would harm you or destroy you.
Wow.
That's my take on it.
I actually like it. I think it's actually good. But, I have to say this. I personally believe that the more masculine the man is, the less likely they will ask people to do for them. The more independent a woman is, I don't like to say masculine a woman is, the more independent she is, the more likely she won't ask a man for help. I've noticed that in my experience, a lot of times, I don't like to ask anyone for help because I realize that it's been used against me. I've realized that sometimes in vulnerable space, I've given ammunition to people, basically telling them what can hurt me and actually can pierce my armor. And it's been used against me. Do you see that being a constant problem in our culture?
I think it can be. I think that we have to choose when to be vulnerable and when not to be. I don't think that every situation or every relationship or every partnership deserves that part of you, and it's our duty to take care of ourselves and protect ourselves at all costs. So if you're being vulnerable in a situation where, and I agree with you, I wholeheartedly have that same independent lifestyle, where I don't ask people for help also, but that's also made me vulnerable in certain situations because I was overexposing myself. So there's a catch-22 when it comes to vulnerability because you have to, trust yourself to be able to decipher when it's okay for you to be vulnerable and when it's not okay, and stop using vulnerability as a weapon. Because some people use vulnerability as a weapon to either get into a space where you are exposed so that they can kind of attack, or some people use it as a weapon against you. You're not vulnerable. I can't talk to you. Yes. I can't do this. I can't do that and there may be a reason, because vulnerability should be something that comes naturally to you in a safe space.
Yes.
And we're not creating those safe spaces for each other and for ourselves.
I actually like that. I'm going to be vulnerable right now, and I'm expecting you to give a vulnerable story because I'm going to give one.
Okay.
And I don't care if you judge me, right? But again, growing up, I used to always feel like my mom favored my older brother. And I used to really think it. But then as I've gotten older, I've come to the realization it's not that. It's he needed more attention. And it took me years to learn that there was a little anger in me and frustration because it was like, yo, I don't have that same level of comfort that you've given him. But also, I was the child that you can tell to sit down and I'll chill. I wasn't the child that had to be into everything. I got into a lot of stuff, but I did it on my own time. But when I was with my mom, I was civil and I knew how to behave. So when I got older, and this is me being transparent, it took me years. And when I became a parent, I learned that that child just might need more attention. And now fast forward, I see it wasn't about love or preference or anything. It was just, he needs more attention. I was more self-sufficient. So it took me a while to understand that. So I'm asking you now, can you give us a vulnerable story for yourself?
Yes, I can.
Namaste.
Yes, I can. I could give you a recent story of vulnerability.
Okay.
I do share that same story. I'm the oldest child.
Okay.
My parents had me very young.
Okay.
So I didn't require as much attention as my younger siblings. I was also very close in age with my parents.
Yes.
So I think a lot of times they viewed me as a sibling or like a peer sometimes versus like a child.
Yes.
Or their child.
Yes.
So we grew up together. And as of recently, I did have resentment that I didn't know that I had because I felt the same way. Like they left me out to like I was responsible for all of these things. And I took care of myself and I took care of my siblings and even my parents at times. And even to this day, they still ask me to kind of be the overseer, which I wouldn't have it any other way, to be honest with you. Like that's, you take on your role, you kind of become that person. But when I had a child, I had to step away from that role a little bit because it definitely left me exposed, but also even more so, it left him exposed. And a couple of weeks ago, he said to me, I was stressed out about some things that we have going on, and he could tell. And I'm very good at masking like my anxiety. Okay. I'm very good at it because my defense mechanism is work. And just ignore it, I'll get through it, and I don't talk about it. So I guess he saw me in a vulnerable space where I was kind of not the normal person. And I was in a vulnerable space with him because he said to me, you need to stop being so nice and you need to stop doing everything for everybody and maybe they'll stop asking you.
Wow.
And it wasn't necessarily in reference to like my parents or my siblings or anything like that. It was really in reference to like some things he had going on, but it made me feel vulnerable and it made me feel like I wasn't doing a good job as a parent because I didn't want him to see me that way. But really what it did was it exposed my vulnerability, but all with him. And now we were able to open up more conversations about, just things like that expose you, but aren't necessarily a bad thing. It just opens up healthy communication between you and whoever that person is.
Wow.
And had he not asked me that, I probably still would have just been freaking out about it and just fixing it and not, letting him know. So I started to talk to him a little bit more about, and he's 16. He's not an adult, but he's on his way to adulthood and going to college and all these things. And I don't want him to feel like he has to not be vulnerable as a black man in America, but only be in a safe space for yourself, but also don't put too much on yourself so that you're raw and vulnerable.
I want to ask you a question. Mm-hmm. As I was sitting here today, I got a text from Tyler, and it said that family reunions are down 47%, and it's due to, I would say, excessive amount of working. That has to be put into the equation. Bills, when working, I'm talking about bills. Another thing is a lot of the older parents, the older people are not there anymore. Mm-hmm. And some of the older people that are there want to be younger people. And I would say the last thing I'm seeing is saying more so unresolved family issues. When you hear that, what do you hear?
Unresolved family issues?
All of them.
I feel like there wasn't a lot of open communication, and that usually in families everybody has their role, and in addition to the things that you mentioned, also people just getting burnt out by always being the one person that has to do everything, or the person that's orchestrating, making sure, and if that person either decides they don't want to do it anymore, they're usually ostracized because it means something negative to everybody else when it really
100%.
could just be them protecting themselves.
100%. Like I'm gonna ask this question. I want to ask everybody in the room this question also. Would you say, let's just say hypothetically, you have a family member, and this is speaking to me. I'm asking from you guys' opinion. Is it healthy to cut somebody off that's toxic to you? That's even though they're family?
I do think it's healthy to do so, but I do feel like sometimes you just cutting the person off doesn't solve the problem for you. I think it's healthy to remove yourself from whatever situation that you need to for your peace, but you have to do it with ease. You can't do that and then harbor about it and then talk about that person every chance you get. Like, that's not healing. That's just you not wanting to or you don't want to address it with the person. You really just want to complain about it. You know what I mean?
So what do you think about that?
I'm big on protecting my energy, so I think it is good, but I agree with Sharika. Maybe sometimes I've done it not in the best way, but I feel like you gotta, like Sharika says, you have to do it and heal and move on from it. But I do think it's positive sometimes that you might have to protect your energy, or even for your growth in life. That person might be stunting your growth and holding you back. So I'm for it, honestly. It just has to be in a positive way, you know?
Wow. You know something, like when looking at my life, right? I've elevated, I've learned, I've grown, I've matured to the point where I'm very considerate of other people's feelings. And sometimes, even when I'm considerate, people still see me as what I was. And I'm like, it's hard sometimes because you're no longer that person, and you're no longer that person, but you also have to identify that, well, with myself, I have to identify that I've hurt people in my past, especially people that say they love me. But looking back, it's like, damn, how do you heal someone or give them the space to heal when you're thinking you're doing what's right? And then you're being considerate of others, and you're trying to teach others and elevate others. But sometimes I feel like people still see you for what you were opposed to who you're becoming. And I'm learning that that's an issue that I'm having in my personal life a lot.
I think that's one of the biggest issues I see in our culture. Like, people want to keep, like you said, keep you to what you were, because that's the version I guess they liked you as.
Yes.
Even if it wasn't the best version. What if you didn't like that version, but they want you to be that specific version? So
that's the comfortable version of you.
I deal with that a lot,
with you.
and I think that's a big problem in our culture.
I agree, and I'm seeing it in itself. Like, I've had to remove certain people from my life because, from my traumas, from my experiences, I had to mature, and I had to face my demons. And in the process of facing my demons, I've lost many battles, but I'm noticing that I'm winning the war. It's the understanding that, guys, when you're becoming the best version of yourself, you will have many battles. There will be moments of seeing your old version of self come through. Even if you've calmed down, you can still get to that anger level, right? Especially pushing the right buttons. So I realized that I'm battling, but I've won a lot. I'm winning the war, because if it's been 10 battles, I've won at least 7 of them. And I know for a fact I lost a few. Right?
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Why is it so important for you to people to see the new you, and you not just, is it for you, or is it for the person? Because if your mentality is, I'm moving away from the person that I was, and I'm moving on to this better person for me and my family and my future.
Yes.
They're not always going to come with you. And this is just my opinion. If I meet you today and I've known you 20 years ago, it could be for me to assume that you're that same person. But if I'm genuinely getting to know who you are today, I don't care.
Okay.
It doesn't really resonate with me, because I chose what I had to do at that time, and now I'm choosing what I need to do at this time. Okay. And if you stumble along the way and it does come out that you're that person, and I understand just kind of what you said before too, like the version of you when they knew you, or the version of you that they've held on to, could be a good thing or a bad thing.
Agreed.
But usually it's for them.
Agreed.
So for me, I'm so comfortable in who I am and what I'm working on for myself that I just allow people to think whatever they want, and I'm just genuinely myself. And, if you you could say, and depending on who you're talking to, everybody's going to have a different version of you. Your mom, your dad, you're somebody's friend, you're somebody's cousin, you're someone's teacher, and those all may be different things to different people.
Okay, so I'm yes or no question. Do you think every human seeks validation from someone they love?
Yes.
Okay. So if a woman is dressed right now, and the man that she says she's loved, I'm using a woman as an example. So if a woman walks in a room, she's fully dressed, she's fully clothed, she feel like she's dressed to the nines, and a man say something simply as, damn, you look fat in that. Mm-hmm. Do you think that would affect her?
It can. It depends on the woman, I think.
But in most cases, do you believe so?
It could.
Okay.
If you care about the person and you care about how they see you. But
yes.
If you don't, then you may not. You may think it's just somebody being hating on you. It just depends on your relationship with that person as it stands and where you want that relationship to go. Because if somebody that you don't know on the internet or something says something, you won't view it the same way because you have no attachment to their words and you don't have an example or a feeling that goes along with that.
Agreed. But when when in the process of becoming a new version of self, you have to make yourself believe that you're that new version. And in the process of becoming that new version, you look for validation extremely. Because a part of you is comfortable with where you were. You're also seeing where you want to go, but you're still fighting with where you were to where you want to go. And a lot of times it's the people that's around you. You're basically looking for them to say it's okay. You're looking for them to say, I respect the man or the woman you're becoming. And a lot of times along that process, that's where my validation was seeking. It was like, damn, I know I was this person, but I want to become this person. And the loved ones I've had, I become a know-it-all. Not a guy like, wait, you become wise. Not a person like you became mature. Not that is because you think you're all of that. I'm like, no, how about, I don't think I'm all that. How about I have a higher sense of self-worth?
But somebody without it can't really recognize it. And that's the part that, that was the
Give him
part.
the mic, Tyler. Give him the mic.
So, question, right? The man that you are now, do you seek validation from others or within yourself?
I would honestly say that everyone in this world seeks validation. Most people wear things because they like to be complimented. Most people purchase, acquire, and do things because they like to be validated amongst their peers. So realistically, I wouldn't say I don't seek validation in a sense of insecurity. I seek validation knowing that I'm going on the right track and the right road. For instance, if I'm in a car and it says California 1,000 miles away, I need to keep seeing signs along my journey of me getting to California that's just telling me I'm going the right way. Everyone looks for that. It's like a practice test, reassurance. A practice test telling you, damn, I got a 90 on this quiz. So when the big test come, I'm ready for it. So, you need those validations along your way. It's just what it is.
So would you consider a person using it as motivation?
I would say so, but sometimes the hardest thing is the people that you want to see you in that new light aren't. So now you're gonna have to go into different rooms of people that see the new version of you as you, and they accept you as you. Some of the people that will know you originally will accept it, but most won't, whether friend or family or even acquaintances. So it's just like you have to just accept it. It's not easy.
And some will see your journey and they'll be rooting for you.
Yeah.
But the other part is sometimes people can't because they can't change the things within themselves. So it does come off as you being a know-it-all or you being booed. The things that we hear because they can't relate to it and they don't have that same journey. And it's not even necessarily that they know they're doing it is a thing. A lot of times they don't know. They're just feeling something and that's their reaction to what they're feeling. And if it means they have to push you away for a certain reason, especially when they feel like you're pushing them away, that could be their response.
Yes. You got something?
Yeah, quick question. And I think that, so a lot of people, you think you're know-it-all, you're this, or you're a hater. I'm starting to hear this term a lot. You're a hater, but it's like, serious question, could you be a hater? We're all human beings, we're all equal. But if we're talking about growth and what you're doing in life, could you hate on somebody that you're doing better than? I'm just curious. What do you guys think about that?
I think subconsciously, absolutely. I think anybody could. Depends on how you feel about yourself and what you've accomplished and how that internalizes in you. if you do see somebody doing something that you want to do, you would hope the politically correct thing to say would be like, I want it to be my motivation.
Yes.
But if I did it 100 times and I can never get to the level that the person would be at, I don't know, would that turn into resentment? Would it turn into like, you know, like how you be like, you hear people say like, oh, why don't this, you know, Kim Kardashian, for example, well, she has all the money, why don't she let somebody else have it? But it's everybody's opportunity to go get it. So if you're not getting it, now you're mad at her because she went to get it. People will find ways to make you look bad or to say negative things about you so that they could feel better about what they're doing.
100%.
I think what you asked is a two-part answer. One of the parts is what she said, and the second part I would say is you can hate on somebody. When you say can you hate on somebody, you can't hate on somebody that you're trying to inspire to do better. So I think that's the hater you're talking, they trying to call you when you're trying to help them do better. There's no way a person could hate on you if they're trying to genuinely help you do better. So if I'm throwing a ladder for you, there's no way I can be hating on you. If I'm trying to teach you the stock market, teaching you investing, there's no way I could be hating on you. But there are people who could be, like she said, subconsciously, they could be hating in the sense of they don't like the way they look, even though they have all the money. They may not like the way they look. So they could still be jealous of you because you could have characteristics. You might be likable. They might not be that likable. So that way, you can be a hater. But I know the one you were saying was the first one, when it was like you're trying to help somebody. You tell them like, yo, if you keep smoking every day, you're not gonna have money. And I'm like, it's just logic. But again, that's what they consider hater because it's also a defense mechanism. They have to deflect truth. In order for them to continue a bad behavior, I tell you, they have to believe it. So whatever they're doing, they have to believe that this is not the problem, right? So if you ever gave someone advice, and I'm pretty sure you have, about a bad relationship, and they know what you're saying is right, but they lie to themselves so much that they don't want to believe it because they think that something is going to happen that's never going to happen. Because our theory is we try to repaint people. They showed us their colors, we try to repaint people, you know? You can't see potential in someone that don't see it in themselves, right? Potential is, I told a girl the other day, we was doing a one-on-one. She said her man, he doesn't have a great job, but she said he's the type of guy who will go out and shovel to make his money. He the kind of guy that go out and mow the lawn. I said that guy is a guy that's just waiting for a great opportunity. I said, he's gonna take it to the top when it comes. And she said, what do you mean? I said, people that are down, not all the time are down, they're just waiting for the opportunity. They have to be prepared for the opportunity. I said, he's a good guy. He's not a bum.
And he's willing to do what needs to be done.
Yes.
He's not lazy.
Yes. So let me ask you a question.
Wait, can I just make one more point? So the other thing I think too that we didn't hit on was like nobody wants to be judged. The other part of it too is even though you're telling somebody something really that could benefit them and you're trying to inspire and help them, they feel like they're being judged.
Yes.
No matter what.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Especially if you're not doing those things. It's like somebody not drinking alcohol and you go to a party and they don't drink. And what are they saying the whole time? Y'all drinking, everybody's drunk.
Yeah.
Whether you are or not, they view it that way because, and it does make you feel judged now because, and it also could make them feel like they're doing something better than you are, or vice versa.
Yes.
So and accountability is kind of what you were hitting on before too, because if somebody knows that what you're telling them is right and they're not willing to do anything to change it, or they don't want to be accountable for whatever actions have to happen, or you even mentioning it to them because they're so comfortable, they're not going to take it in a positive way because now you're pointing out the obvious, which they know. They can't change it on their own. Now you're interfering because you're pointing it out, trying to hold them accountable, but also they feel judged.
Agreed.
So it comes off as hate, or the person thinks they know everything, but really it's just facts. You know, it's really just honesty.
I agree.
And that's where the transparency and the healthy communication comes in, because if I know I love you, and you know I love you, and I'm telling you something genuinely that's for your greater good, you would know that my intentions are good and I'm not doing it because I'm trying to condemn you. I'm doing it because I want to see you do better.
Agreed. I got to ask a question. Anybody can chime in if they want. And with cooking, yes or no? If I'm cooking a recipe and it's missing certain ingredients, would the recipe taste as good if I had all the ingredients?
No.
I think one of the reasons why you're seeing the recipe of men not come to its completion or not becoming great men is because one of the ingredients that's missing in these men is vulnerability. If a man can't be vulnerable, the man can't heal from his personal experiences, his traumas. So therefore, that's a major ingredient that's missing amongst men. When I sit down and me too, I've literally just learned how to be like that. There were times even you and I would have conversations and I would try to hoard and hold back because I'm told that, yo, you're a man, you're not supposed to feel, and if you feel, you're weak. But then you learn that revealing is actually helping you heal, and vulnerability is actually a catalyst for strength. So when you talk to people, I'm like, they don't see it that way though. They see it more like if a man is vulnerable, he's weak. You know, how do you feel about that?
I think,
especially raising a son.
I think that it's healthy to encourage men to be vulnerable in certain situations. I think that every man, specifically black men, need a space to be safe and be vulnerable. I think it starts at home, absolutely. But I also feel like no one, man, woman, whoever, should use their vulnerability as a weapon to get what they want all the time. And I think that's the balance that you have to have. Yes, we're in a safe space, but you being vulnerable doesn't control the way the person is going to receive you, and it doesn't control or dictate what's going to happen after that. So if you use vulnerability because you're trying to get your way, that's not healthy. If you become a vulnerable person or you keep saying that you're vulnerable because you want people to agree with what you're saying, that's not healthy.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. There's a parent that comes in my shop, right? And what I love about her is with her sons and her daughter, she always tells them to use their words. Like rather than them cry, she wants them to express themselves. Even if it's geared towards her, she's like, tell me what's wrong. And yo, Tyler, she sits there and allow them to express themselves. And it could make her uncomfortable. But yet and still, she says it's better that they express themselves than they hoard and they act out. She said, Q, I would rather them explain to me what it is. Plus, you're teaching them a skill of how to be accountable, not only be accountable, how to give accountability, and also how to express and explain yourself. I think in a lot of black families, I don't think that's a regular thing. I think in most cases, if your parent did something to you and if you approach, it becomes a level of defense and deflection. And I've seen that as I've gotten older, I was like that. But, you know, birds of a feather are, the apple don't fall too far, right? So in reality, I had to learn how to receive, and I say the word constructive. Constructive is a process of building. So when I'm hearing constructive criticism, I'm learning like, you know what? This is not critiquing me about my life. This is actually trying to help build me and encourage me and motivate me. How do we allow people to be vulnerable in safe spaces is how you create a healthier culture. And I do think that a lot of other cultures allow that more, especially when I'm not trying to make it a black-white thing, but I do see that there are white kids that can express themselves more to their parents than a lot of black parents.
They're allowed to have a voice. And we've even heard, like, I remember, and this is a vulnerable story I'm about to tell, right? So 2 parts to it. I remember when my mom, when I first had my son, or not when I first had him, but just when she was first around me with my son. Like, so she was always the mother figure, right? So she always told everybody what to do.
Yes.
And she's got a bunch of kids. So she's always been in the space of telling everybody what to do.
Yes.
So she definitely likes to intervene in you telling your kid things. So I remember her saying one time, like, kids should be seen and not heard, or maybe not that specific statement, but she said something like,
to the magnitude.
Yeah, and she always says like, oh, if I come back as a, you know, I want to come back as your kid because of the way that you are. And kind of similar to what you said about the lady at the shop. Like, what I've always tried to do is, everybody doesn't have your best interest at heart, especially don't just listen to people because they're adults. Yes, have respect.
Yes.
And yes, have discernment. But they don't always have good intentions for you.
Yes.
So ask questions and don't allow things to happen to you that don't feel right.
Yes.
Also, even me, I mean, that was the first thing I sent them to school. And I'm like, look, if anybody goes in the bathroom with you, or, you know, you're telling them about, like, you know, things that could happen, including me or your dad, and they're lingering around too long, you let somebody know. And that's uncomfortable, obviously, for us, but also, you don't have to let things happen to you just because you're a child and people don't value you as much.
Yes.
And the second part to that is, so my mom, we always thought that my brother was her favorite child, right, Just? You know who I'm talking about. Okay. So she doesn't really have a favorite child, but it appears to us as if he's her favorite child. They're just closer. They have a different relationship. We understand that. So me and him didn't get into it, but I was trying to give him a lesson, and she kind of blocks that a lot of times because she just doesn't want the conflict, I guess is what it is. Or she just wants to pacify it.
Yes.
So I said something to her in reference to him, and I was like, put me on speakerphone. And she was like, nope, I'm not going to do that. I'm not getting involved. So I called his phone. So she comes to the house, and we're talking about it, and she was not angry about it, but she kind of felt like I went over her head to have this conversation with him, which should have been directed at him to begin with. And we got into it a little bit because I finally realized what the issue was that I felt she protected him all the time, and she always left me out to dry because she knew I would be okay, and I'd never told her that. So I said it to her that day, and it wasn't a pretty conversation. It wasn't a good conversation because she didn't hear me. She thought I was just being combative, and I kept saying to her, no, I need you to hear this because until this point in my life, I didn't realize this was the thing that triggers me so much. So if you could just listen. And she's like, I don't have any favorite kids. I don't, that's not how and I'm like, I love you all the same. And I said, you probably do. But this is how it feels. So I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to be mindful, and I just want to get this off my spirit, and you're the person I need to tell this to.
Yes.
And she listened, but she didn't really receive it well.
Yes.
She got very defensive. She got sad because she's like, I'm not trying, I don't, and I wasn't saying it was intentional. I wasn't thinking it was malicious by any means. I just wanted to express it. Yeah, I just wanted to express it.
Yes.
So that was a time where I had to have a very, very uncomfortable conversation. And to this day, we probably never really, really spoke about it again. But I know she heard me this time, and that made me feel a whole hell of a lot better. And I probably won't even care anymore. Yeah. But I was able to say it, and that made me feel good.
I think, and when you confront someone, right, or you approach someone with something they did that bothered you, or make you feel a way that you feel like you have to speak about it, I think the first thing a person should do is, let's say hypothetically you say, Q, I need to tell you something, and the first thing I should do, even if it wasn't my intentions, I shouldn't make my intentions trump your feelings. I should automatically say, you know what? I heard you, I understand. I hear you, I understand what you're saying.
Validation.
Validated, what your feelings are validated. But now I'm gonna say, but if you don't mind, I would like to really express what was my purpose and what I was trying to do. I think that if you switch those two, we could have way more healthier communication as a culture. So first off, identifying like, wait, this person does have feelings. This person's feelings is being validated. And now after that, I can entry or open the door to what was my intentions. But I think we don't do that as a culture. I think we go straight to our intentions.
And hear
that
the person
wasn't
out.
what I was trying to do.
Don't be defensive because it may not end up in being a fight. It could just be the person's never been heard on this topic.
Agreed.
And they need to tell you. Just listen, whether you agree or not. Because that's where the conflict comes and where the defense and all of that, the argument comes. Because now you don't like that the person told you how they were feeling and it makes you feel a way.
Yeah.
And you may not have done it intentionally, but it doesn't stop the person from feeling how they felt. And that's the thing. You can't control the outcome of what it is. If I do something to you and I apologize for it, right?
Yes.
I can't determine how you're going to take my apology.
100%.
I feel a certain way or you feel a certain way.
100%.
So if you say you're sorry for doing something but it really sticks with me, give the person time.
Grace.
That's it.
We allow some call in right now. Someone call in 516-253-1150. Once again, 516-253-1150. Call in right now. We're talking about vulnerability. If you would like to ask either one of us a question right now, we're allowing you to call in 516-253-1150. Pin that number. Go ahead.
Does anybody in the group have a question?
Yeah.
Just piggybacking off of the reunion, I'm looking at a couple things. So they said black family reunions are down 44%.
44.
And it's because of the dynamics once people's grandparents died. I agree. Do you guys see like the shift in the families after the grandparents died? Because I feel like after my grandma died, she was kind of like the glue to the whole family.
But if you notice that most families from our grandparents and our parents and upward, they grew in the household of a multitude of people. You're starting to see more people grew up in the house without their cousins and their family. Like my generation was probably one of the last generations that grew up with more family than not.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm seeing it different now than I've seen it before. I see couple families who would rather struggle than get a big old home and let everybody just get right. If you look at, we always say this, the Indian, Asians, the Pakistanians, all these other cultures, they're financially doing well because their money can go so much further because it's not being stretched to the limit. It's actually being stretched, but more so being invested than more stretched to the limit, because there's a multitude of them working together to pay bills. I think that as a culture, we tend to not do that, thinking that we're gonna get to levels without working together, right? Yeah. It's sad. But then again, they all on one accord too.
Yeah, they are working for the same goal.
Yes.
And then everybody has a turn.
Yes.
You know, like it might not be my year this year, but we're all gonna do this as a team, and everybody's putting in the same amount of work. And that's really what it comes down to. I mean, if we're gonna call a spade, the thing about it is that the accountability fact, because we wanna argue or be defensive about things, we're never gonna be on one accord, because how could we possibly be working towards the same thing and goal if everybody thinks it should be done differently and nobody wants to listen to each other?
Yeah, yeah. But another thing I think we don't believe in as a culture is something called delayed gratification. We are a very instant microwave culture, where we tend to believe that things are supposed to happen today. And it's very narcissistic, if you want to have a real discussion, to believe that you are the determining factor to when and where and how and what day you're going to get your success. I think the creator, which is in the heavens, determines that, right? As long as you continue to work, you know, he's allowing you to skip the line. Let's just say, hypothetically, you have 1,000 children, and as your children work harder, you move them up. So as you worked harder these last 3 months, you went from a number 1,000 to number 850 in line for these bigger blessings, because he's like, yo, I need to see you continue to work at it. I need to see, because you got in line when somebody at number 1 been doing the same discipline for 12 years. The same routine, the same goal-oriented mentality. They haven't had no real hiccups, and you've had a ton of them. And that's what put you back at 1,000, and you want to jump the line all the way to 1. And, you know, that's where I think that's a little bit of narcissistic.
And what you do with your opportunity when you get it. Because like you said before, if you're preparing for it, then you're ready when it comes. But if you're just entitled to it and you feel like because you do work, you should get the big prize, that doesn't always go together. It doesn't always go together. And if you're passing up opportunities because you feel like there's another one, kind of like the guy that you said about that was shoveling snow and doing all these different things. Yes. I'm sure he doesn't want to be doing those things either. But what if he goes to somebody's house and they're like, I love the way you do this. Let's start a business of shoveling snow, because and you could teach everybody how to do it. Yes. You know what I mean? So we have to also look at how we present ourselves to the world and what we do with the opportunities and how we value them. Because it may not look the way we want them to look. But
you know, that stems from the participation awards. That stems from everybody looking for the attention on social media. Like if you look at social media right now, people could wear things that I'm not even trying to body shame or anything, that's not aesthetically for them, and yet and still they want to be cheered. Yeah. If you look at some of the posts on social media and you read some of the comments, I think some of the people are going to hell.
No, I definitely
because they
do that sometimes.
Pushing
like
people,
I just look at the comments just to see what people are thinking.
It's crazy.
No, and the fact that they feel like it's.
Do you think it's like, are they genuinely saying that, or are they just being
I really don't
sarcastic?
know what I think it's entertainment. Like I feel like some people just do it for like the wow factor, or like for the, you know, because sometimes even before social media, like remember like they used to have people going on American Idol and stuff, and the first thing you would say would be like, why would they let their sister, mother, whoever it is go? Because they look crazy. Yeah. You know that they couldn't possibly think, but some people do it just for whatever attention they could get, and then there are people that will perpetuate that by gassing them up to think that they're really going to do this.
Because to me, it's phenomenal. Like for instance, if I say anything pertaining to the LGBT community, if I say anything to that community, which I don't have nothing against them, but if I said anything, I'm this person. But I'm watching people online, they'll tease a guy like Shamar, who's clearly born with a disorder. Right. And they're teasing him. Right? They even like teasing his deformity, and it's like a funny thing. And I'm like, I don't find that funny. I don't find it humorous.
But Shamar feeds off of it, and that's the thing. He keeps putting more stuff out there because the attention he's getting from them shaming him or saying is something. Yes. You know what I mean? It's something. And to him, he thrives, obviously, off of it because he wouldn't put it out there.
It's good. I see more now. Yeah. People are like I think it started more so, I would say one of the first ones I really kind of noticed it with, and I know him personally. Oh, you know A-Town? Remember him? Good morning
A-Town
to you.
No.
The birds are chirping. Okay, he's a guy from Philly. That's one of my guys. And I felt like it was like, you can see that he's challenged.
Oh, okay.
And right, but again, very good person.
Yeah.
Great person. You know, I've actually done an interview with him and everything. Good person.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's still, you'll see that people make fun of these people. And I'm like, this to me is diabolical.
Yeah.
But if a person tells somebody, now I think we could tease people for their disabilities, but you can't tease people for the things that they're wearing.
Yeah.
And in the way they're presenting themselves.
Well, that's because words like trauma and bullying, you know, it just got out of control. Like, you can't, just because I do this doesn't mean I'm bullying you, you know, and that's also how people are feeding their kids. You know, like, they're feeding them these things, these words, and, you know, we joke about, like, getting beat with the cord, the extension cord.
Yes.
But that happened to people.
Of course it did.
It did. And it may have, or maybe he was just bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, maybe the mother, that was her last ditch effort of trying to save this kid from running outside in front of a car and killing himself.
Yes.
You know, like, so when you hear, even with the whole, you know, jokes about CPS, you know, you definitely would not be living in your mother's house and call Child Protection Services and think you were still gonna live there the next day.
I gotta ask you a question.
Yeah.
At what age do you think your child should be removed from your home? Like, put out?
Meaning for doing things wrong?
No,
or like
even if they're just doing the right thing.
I don't really have an age. I feel like it just depends on your household, and I feel like it depends on what their journey is. Some kids need more support, some don't need any at all.
It disgusts me. I was watching a video, and it's one of my videos, and I was reading the comments, and the guy was saying basically how once my kid turned 18, he gotta go. And I'm like, you're telling a premature person to go into the real world and fend, and the cost of living has increased to the magnitude that even of a lot of us who brag about what we've accomplished to our children, if we grew up in their era, a lot of us wouldn't be in our position because it was a lot easier. Think about it, the entries on houses was cheaper in 2021, we're in 2025. You're talking about a 4-year differential. You gotta make 70% more money to buy a house in 4 years. Every person that bought their house 3 to 5 years ago has equity. That's never really been, and not a small amount of equity. Some people have 100,000, 180,000 in equity, and that's a rarity in real estate.
Yeah, I feel like in our culture specifically, like once you turn 18, it's like you got to figure it out. Like the parents have, you got to figure it out mindset. But if you notice other cultures, they're building because they'll have a 26-year-old living with their brothers, mom, everybody's, and they're all chipping in, putting in big house, and they build and scale from there. So I think that's a big issue because it seems like once you turn 18, you really just got to figure it out on your own.
18 now is not the same 18 it was when we were 18. Like, I look at my son and I'm like, there's no way he's prepared, and as much, and that it also goes into the recipe too. How are you preparing your child? Because if they're not out independently doing things, or they're not paying any bills, or they're not, then you're sending them to the wolves because they don't know how to do anything.
You want to really be honest with you, and the truth of the matter is, Black culture has an infatuation with struggle. Yeah. We love to boast and brag about struggle as if it gives you a level or a badge of honor. For instance, I'm from the hood. I'm from the projects. I had a room. We didn't have a room, right? We used to eat beans and franks. We used to just eat beans. Everyone is like, has to trump each other's story of who struggled more. Yeah. When I've noticed that the people that really do come from struggle, they really don't glorify it. It's the people that don't come from struggle who want to pretend to be more in a struggle than they are. If you're saying it in the midst of a conversation, I understand why it comes up, and we're just having a discussion, that's different. But the people that glorify struggle is because they learned how to struggle, they didn't learn how to live. They still struggle, and they have a struggler's mentality, and they think that struggling is a way of life. And again, life is not about struggle. See, those coaches that we just said, they have a mentality, life is about living. Life not about struggling. Black people have an infatuation with boasting and glorifying struggle to the magnitude where my struggle will always trump yours, because if you say something, I'm gonna create a bigger story that's worse than your starting point, just to make me feel superior to you.
But you know what that is too? you ever hear like it's their the battle of being more real. You know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, I'm a street, I'm from the street, I'm this, but it doesn't make you a better person.
No.
Your struggles doesn't always make you a good person.
But you know, they don't want to identify that a lot of their struggles is what they've done to themselves.
Well, that too, yeah.
That's what they don't
Well, it's
identify.
like it's not a good thing. Like, oh, my mom, we didn't have nothing of that. It's like, she
You know,
didn't
you could've got a
work.
job, right?
Yeah, it's like,
You know, you could've got a job and help.
She didn't work. Why are you acting
Yeah.
like that's a good thing? I'm from the trenches. Bro,
Okay.
okay.
and you're not trying to do
help.
nothing to get y'all out of there.
Yeah.
It's a trauma competition. We do, and I feel like our culture, we've been glamorized surviving. Like
Yeah.
we're used to surviving, not living, surviving. So we think the working all day, every day, struggle, come here. Nothing wrong with the 9 to 5s, but time is your most valuable asset, and I don't think we value time in our culture. I don't think so.
No, because social media has, we've already been a culture that likes to look like we're successful. And social media has given us a platform to look like we're doing better than what we're doing. And not only do we look like it, we forget to become, because we practice so long on the character that we're pretending to be that we forget to become the person that we really want to become. I think the same energy that people put into pretending, if they were putting into becoming, they will become. Because it took me to tell myself years ago I was broke. I had to be honest with myself. And I said, I gotta work on this. But if I would have started engaging in social media was a hot thing at the time. And if I would have started aesthetically making myself fit the character, I would have started believing I was the character, such as the person that is not a tough person or not a gangster. But what they do is they play this character so long, they start to believe it themselves. And they genuinely believe that that's truly who they are, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you see. But if you can't be vulnerable, you won't be able to speak your truth. And there's a guy, you know, we all deal with, Dre, all of us, we deal with, you know, I'm going with it. He lies so much that he don't even know his lies. And he creates a different story depending on who he's talking to. And it's so scary. I think he suffers from multiple personality disorder or something, because around you, if you allow him, he'll be the most sensitive, crying guy. But then you get around the toughest guys and he's been hurt, he's been shot, he's been all of these things, and none of these things nor true. And it's phenomenal that he's switches up. You ever see that me, myself, and Irene?
Yes.
I see him as that.
Yeah.
Like he has so many different personalities.
Isn't it crazy when somebody lies? Like if you know a person, right, and you could hear them telling the same story that you're a part of, but they have a completely different recollection, or you could tell that they're trying to, and even so much so that they like try to get you involved. Like, didn't that happen? And it kind of shocks you a little bit because you're like,
Diabolical.
was I there?
Diabolical. It's diabolical.
Yeah.
Look, that is diabolical. It's scary
But it's
because
also a defense mechanism, and it's really ultimately insecurity, because you can't, at a certain, and I won't even say at a certain age, at a certain point in your life, right? You're never going to reach your highest potential if you're not really comfortable with who you are, or who, you know, if you don't know about yourself.
agreed.
If you don't know where you're headed, the type of person you are, because nobody's perfect.
Yes.
We all have stuff with us. We all have it. And it's up to you whether you want to continue those behaviors and acknowledge them and like move forward.
Yes.
Or if you want to just double down on it and then still be complaining about why you're not, you know, where you need to be.
Yes.
And being vulnerable is definitely a part of all of that, because in what vulnerability is necessary to complete situations, or to complete goals in certain situations, I should say.
Yes.
So if you're not yourself ever, and you don't know who that is, how could you ever be able to do that, fulfill that? You can't, because you don't know authentically anything about yourself. You're just trying to fit into wherever you fit in, and everything is not for you. It's not all your journey.
You want to know something? And it took me a while to learn this. The longest journey or the longest road that every human will go down is a road called purpose. And when I've learned that I had to start taking this road and going after my purpose, I realized that it's never an end. It's always a consistent journey. And I'm like, you know, once I embraced that journey, I started seeing like more certain things because I was honest. I started being honest with myself. You know, you would be honest. If anyone knows me personally, I used to have an extreme level of arrogance, and you can validate that. I used to be very arrogant, and my arrogance, it wasn't because I was arrogant. It was more so because I was insecure. And it took me a while to learn, like, yo, we hide. You ever see somebody, and if you ever been in a penal, they'll say something like, anybody touch me, I get busy, I get active. He's soft. All you gotta do is punch him in his mouth. He's not like that. But that's his way of deflecting. It become a defense mechanism for him to be able to protect himself because he gotta scare people off. Meanwhile, he's
it's
not like
the kill
that.
or be killed mentality where you wanna, or hurt people. It's like you want to make sure that things don't happen to you, so you're willing to project whatever it is that's onto somebody else. Which could also be the thing that we're talking about with people on the internet and all these other things, because truth be told, if somebody's on the internet and they're talking about their life, or they're putting you into a space, a vulnerable space of theirs, and they're choosing to do this, we all know that. But for you to now take that, and because you don't have the courage to do it, or because you don't feel like that's for you, why is it okay now for you to go and take this person who's being vulnerable and now crush them from being able to learn themselves? Because we don't know why people do those things. They just get on and say whatever they feel like they should at the time, and I think it's okay. But why do I need to now shut them down because I don't like what they're saying? Because it may reflect me, or I don't have the courage to get on there and learn myself as well. So now it becomes a fight or a projection.
I wanna dispute some terms that I watch that as a culture we use a lot. One of the number one things I want to dispute that a lot of people say, and I'm being honest with you, I don't use the term hate a lot, but I hate this term. I hate when people say I don't need nobody. Yeah. I hate that term.
Or I don't care.
Because I don't care. Yeah. Those are extreme defense mechanisms.
First of all.
Of course. I don't need nobody.
Or no one does anything for me.
Come on. You know, and those phrases is like, it's crazy. I'm like, we all gonna need somebody, right? It's just,
and it's not a good thing to not need people, because you do. There's certain functions that will not happen if you don't have another person. Just ain't gonna happen. You'll never reproduce. Yes. You'll never have a conversation. Yes. If you don't have somebody else, and you need people for those things.
They say humans will go naturally insane. Yeah. If they're not having conversations with humans. That's why even in you know, you can't isolate someone for so long because they'll go crazy. They'll legit go crazy. But again, when you sit down, we have these discussions, you learn as a culture, we have a very unhealthy behavior pattern that's been created before us. It's called generational trauma. I've noticed that I've even taken on issues that I never even chosen. You know, that I've woke up one day and realized that I was. And I said, well, you know, like for instance, one of the things I've seen that I used to be is a very hypersensitive man when it comes to like proving my security. Very hypersensitive. I always felt like I had something to prove. Now the difference of seeking validation and having something to prove, it to me is not the same thing. You know, when you hear seeking validation and approval, what are you hearing?
I think approval is subjective because I feel like no one really needs approval, but validation is different. It's like you said before. You know, approval could be, it's like somebody, you're asking for permission almost, right? Approval. But validation is, we're together, we're on this journey together. You know, is there anything, validation to me would be checking in just to make sure we're still on the right track. Yes. Versus now because approval could also come with negative consequences. If you decide you decide not to give me what I'm seeking. Yes. Now that could ruin my entire journey because I needed that from you and you won't give it to me. Agreed. And now we're done.
You know, it's just fascinating that I wish that more people would be comfortable expressing themselves. And ladies and gentlemen that's on the live and on the podcast watching this episode, I don't want you to think that it's weak to be vulnerable. I think it's normal, it's healthy. And I think the weakest person when it comes to vulnerability is the person that uses someone's vulnerability against them, hence the reasoning to being the problem. The person that's actually the problem is the person that's using the person's vulnerability against them. That's the problem. That's really the weak person. Because if you told me something in confidentiality and you came to me with seeking a shoulder to cry on or an ear, and I use that back against you, that says volumes about you as a person. It says volumes. You know, I've learned things about friends and people that I love about their family aesthetics, and I would never mention it.
You know, tell their secrets after.
Yeah.
The other thing that you mentioned too, if I seek information from you and make you feel like you're in a safe space to be vulnerable, and then I turn right back around and use that very same thing to destroy you or to manipulate you, then that's a weak person as well. Because some people do that. Some people do know your character or know your sensitivities, and they will put you in a space where you feel vulnerable and you're able to just to turn around and kind of throw it in your face. And that, I think, is definitely a nasty move.
You ever seen the movie, and I want you to, you ever seen the movie Creed? There's a scene where he's talking to his wife, and she was asking him something about his past. And he said to her, why do you want to know these things? So you could feel sorry for me? So you can, he said, what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to forget him. And the issue with not healing from those issues, you don't forget them. There will be moments where certain things will be like a flash or a trigger, right? You ever see someone overreact? But if you can identify to why the overreaction is coming, then you'll see why they're overreacting. But I think a lot of times we don't go to the deep-rooted source. We just look at the surface level. Surface, you're beautiful, but you could be every bit of crazy inside, right? Same with a guy. He could be handsome, six-pack, the heights, requirements, whatever it is, but don't necessarily mean that they're healthy, mentally healthy, relationship-wise. I know people that are great friends, but they're not good in relationships. They're good people, but they're not good in, like on a friendship level, excellent, but they're just not good to be in relationships with because they're very selfish. But it's weird because they're not selfish in friendships. Right. But they're very selfish in relationships.
A different part of you. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And friendships don't have to be so intimate and so close.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like now you could be a friend with somebody and you could live miles and miles away from them and be great friends. But if you try to have a relationship with them, now they're in a different space. Plus now you're merging your space and your energy and your time and your or environments together, and that can cause friction.
Yes.
With two people that aren't made to do that.
You want to hear something amazing? You ever see like a child go through like a divorce? And let's just say hypothetically the kid is 13, 14, 10, 11, 12, whatever age. You know that's that kid's first breakup that they ever witnessed. And the sad part is, at that age, the level of maturity of understanding it is not there. So the first breakup that they've ever encountered is their parents. And a lot of times we take on those breakups. If my mother and father couldn't make it, I don't believe I can make it. My mom asked me one time, what was one of the worst things she ever said to me growing up? I said, the worst thing you ever said to me. My mom, she used to get diabolical when she got upset. But I will say the worst thing my mother ever said to me was, she don't need a man. Because for many years, I didn't believe I needed a woman. So that's the thing I think that stuck with me the most, opposed to anything else. It used to make me not want to ever be vulnerable or ever feel like I need a woman, because it just made me feel like I was weak or less than. And that's the one thing I always said, if you never would have said this, maybe I would have respected it a little more, because but again, that was her strength. Yeah. I don't need somebody. I could do it by myself. And I've taken on that need. If you date me, always understand that if a glass window is broken, I'm the kind of person, I will never ask you to fix it. But if you care about me, you will relieve the stress and just do it. That's the people I love the most. I love the initiators that see like, how can I take some of the burden off of him? Yeah. If you see that I'm being weak, I'm hurting inside, I'm going through something, like just understand me and know that I'm not a crybaby. I don't know how. My crying is allowing you to do it. My crying is believing that you got my back. That's my crying. My crying is not shedding tears. My crying is You know, sometimes I isolate myself, I get quiet, and I just sit in the corner because that's my coping mechanism, where I've been considerably toxic in a sense of lack of communication can give you your person, making them feel emotionally insecure because they don't know where y'all stand.
Well, it also could feel like a punishment to the
Yes,
person.
it could make it feel like a punishment.
And it may not have anything to do with them at all. It
Yes.
just may be, because I have a defense mechanism of shutting down, or just, like you said, I'll never say I don't care.
Yes.
But I'll just drop something. If I just don't feel the fulfillment or there's a problem, sometimes I will, and it's like what Tyler said before about, we're talking about shutting people. I'm a communicator to a certain extent. But
Yes.
if there is no solution, because I'm a
Yes.
solution-based person,
Yes.
then I'm done. And it's like it never happened.
Yes.
And that's not always good because the other person may not understand where that comes from, and it could make them feel as if they did something wrong when it may not have anything to do with them at all. So that, I get that.
But man, when you manage expectations, that's where you tend to seem like you have the most control. Like, I learned how to manage my expectations. I stopped trying to see me and everybody. Right? I used to always
And
want
don't
to see that.
expect you from other people.
Yeah,
You do it because it's in your spirit
just
to
me.
do, and then you go on about your business,
Yes.
which is probably the reason why you don't like to ask anybody to do anything for you.
You know, when you've been let down so many times, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to establish healthy boundaries when you've been hurt so many times. And you know what's sad is the one thing I do see in the dating aspect is most people, if they didn't really heal, you're gonna suffer from the burdens of what the last person did. So it's like a wound that was never properly healed. You become the bandage
Sore
now.
every now and again.
Yeah. So it's like, let's say hypothetically, there was a lady one time, she was like, "You remind me of my ex too much." And I looked at her like, "What?" She said, "You remind me of my ex because I guess we look and the way we speak and our mannerism." And she said, "We're also the same sign." And I looked at her, I said, "A sign don't naturally always have to reflect on who you are as a person."
Yeah.
Right? I know cancers that aren't like
Nothing like you,
nothing,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just depend on the person's upbringing, what they had to endure, what
And
they've
it
seen.
depends on their goal. Like, what is their intention? And that's another thing that we have to be very truthful and transparent about when it comes to vulnerability.
Yes.
What are your intentions for being vulnerable? And what are your intentions for yourself, to put yourself in that space?
Yes.
What are you trying to accomplish? Because that sets the tone for whatever it is that you're doing. And also, it could, like you said, managing your expectations and doing damage control before anything happens. Because you don't dictate what other people are going to do with the information that you're providing them, or the door that you opened.
Yes.
And you have to be okay with that. So even like I was saying before, letting go with ease. You have to be okay with whatever the consequences of you being vulnerable are going to be, and you have to be okay with it for yourself.
Yes.
And understand what that means, because it could mean the person never talks to you again.
Yes.
It could mean that they want to talk to you more. Are you ready for that? What do you want out of it?
Yes. So what, and I'm going to ask this before, what helped you become more vulnerable, or being more comfortable, or become more comfortable with being vulnerable?
Tired of fighting, tired of defending myself, tired of explaining myself, and just feeling like there was too much stress on me and on my spirit, and I wanted to be in peace with myself. And I wanted things to gracefully, without me having to do a whole song and dance. I wanted the people that weren't for me to go. And I didn't want to have those courtesy conversations. I didn't want to have to be a part of making sure that me healing was okay with them. Yeah. That's what made me be comfortable with it, because being vulnerable means you have to make some heavy decisions for yourself. And I wanted to make them without the resistance of everybody else's approval.
I know you for many, many, many years, and I know that you're very, very, very strong. I have to ask this question: how can women learn the difference between masculine energy and just being a strong woman? I notice a lot of women misconstrue being a very strong woman and being very masculine. What could you say to those who's looking to balance the difference or learn the difference between the two?
Listen to the people around you that love you and have your best interest. if you're getting into the same battle or the same response from people about different things because of your delivery, your tone, and how you're conveying yourself to them,
Yes.
there's something to that.
Yes.
I am an assertive person, and I used to be an aggressive person in certain situations because of my independence,
Yes.
which was my choice.
Yes.
What I had to learn how to do was use my brain and not my emotions. Separate the feelings that you have from the problem.
Yes.
And if you want to effectively handle it and you care about the outcome of it, you can't come with daggers. You have to be open and also let go of the release of control, because you can't control. If something happens, now we have to deal with it, whichever way we're going to deal with it. Me being angry or me yelling or me being very aggressive with you about whatever it is isn't going to change what happened, and it's not going to change how I feel about it. But it may change the trajectory of my relationship with the person and what I learn and what I take from that situation for myself, no matter what happens.
You know, now that you're older and with more experience, and so am I, you don't notice that, like, you ever went to have a conversation with someone and you was about to tell them something personal about you, and then you think about it and it plays out in your head like this person might use this against me later? So you're like, nah, never mind,
Yeah.
never mind. You never did that?
Always. I do that a lot because I'm a very transparent person as a rule of thumb for myself, because I don't like to, because of what we just spoke about. I'm for the people, but I'm not for the people. I'm for myself. So I do it all the time, because someone tells me something doesn't mean I automatically have to open up and tell them something, just to
100%.
be on the same page.
Yes. Go ahead.
Or what about as well, like an opportunity, you have a big opportunity or something, like you just know who to say to, because if you say to that person, they might mess up the energy, what could happen potentially.
Yeah. Energy's big.
I agree with that.
It's big.
It is.
It's like certain people you can and can't tell, like, of course, personal things, but I think opportunities,
Yeah,
you
you
know,
should keep it to
certain things you
yourself.
got going on that are big for you, sometimes you have to know who you can tell. Like, I can tell Q, I can tell Sharika, I can tell everybody here, but it's certain people, if I tell them, that opportunity might get messed up just because their energy.
And
Or they
Brandon,
can
is
change
it,
your feeling about it because of their reaction, because you're seeking approval or you're seeking validation is why you're telling them. So if they don't give you what you're looking for, or the response isn't as you wished it would be, it could mess you up. It
Yeah, I
definitely
agree.
can.
I agree. But it's you know, learning self and learning to grow and understanding that, you know, vulnerability is a necessity, is an extreme necessity. You know, I'll give you a quick story. There was an ex that was dating, and one of the reasons why we're no longer together is because I didn't grow up with my father. You know, my father, I didn't know him until I was about 30. So long story short, we went to go see him, and this is me being vulnerable. His brother's wife contacted me, and she was like, yo, you should get to know your father. He's getting older, da-da-da-da. And at this time, I was just learning to have a relationship with him. I'm not a religious person, I'm spiritual. I'm a spiritual guy. And I think religion causes too much separation. That's the problem with it for me. It's too much separation. If we don't practice the same, if you go to church, I go to Juma, we're in two different worlds. We can't pray together, you know, but I think God has created us all as his children. It's one God, one creator. You know, the way you preach and practice, that's different, but it's just one God. But anyway, I mentioned it to her. I said, you know what? My aunt reached out and she wants me to meet with my dad. And I don't know how I feel about it. Knowing me and knowing my circumstances is a very vulnerable conversation for me. Very vulnerable. So she says to me, I think you should go see him. So I say, you know what? I'm gonna go do it. We set up the meeting. I end up meeting my dad. He turns out to be a good person. Whoever my dad was when he was young, my dad had me very young. So whoever he was then, he's clearly not today as this grown man. He's a great person now. I don't want to say he was bad because I don't know him. So I don't know if he's good or bad. I don't know. But anyway, he's a good person. But one day we get into a conversation, and I mentioned a few times, when you're born with a penis, you come out your mother as a male. If you're born with a vagina, you come out as a female. Without the process of learning, a female becomes a woman if she's around women that teaches her how to be a woman. Otherwise, she just becomes a grown female. And a man, the same process, he can become a grown male. But a man and a woman, it's a job that you have to learn. So I told her I didn't know how to be a man, and I'm trying to learn it because there's certain things I didn't know. Like I had the mentality where I would argue with a woman for hours because I learned that from my mom. And I'm not shooting my mom, but it's just saying learned behavior. I didn't know that was wrong, right? Get emotional all the time. But anyway, after this, we get into a little spat, and it goes to the extreme. You would be a real man if you were to grow up with your father, because clearly he turned out all right. And when you look at how you took someone's most intimate moment, right, and stepped on it, and then you want that person to still love you. And I hate to say this, and I'm going to be honest with you, and I do see men do it, but a lot of women do that. They use the man's vulnerability against them, and I just don't respect it, because it's like, of course you should know personable things about each other because y'all are, but again, this is what we do as a culture. I'll give you another story. There was a guy, his woman ended up getting a UTI, right? And any woman knows every woman has probably had that before, right? So she had like an odor. So they got into an argument one day, Tyler. She's already devastated from the fact that she has a UTI, and it's an odor, and he uses it against her in anger. Oh, you smell, and you smell. If another man would have smelled, that's crazy. And I'm like, this is where we are as a culture when it's all about, I'm hurt, so I just want to see how much I can hurt you to make me feel better about myself. And that's what I'm seeing more so prominent in the culture. Men do it, and I see women do it. But I do, from my experience, I've definitely dealt with more women, but I'm also not that vulnerable with men like that, so I don't know. It could be both, I don't know. But more so, I've been vulnerable with women. Now, I would rather tell a man something more than I tell a woman something. So what do you got to say before we get out of here today?
Nothing in particular, I think.
Any story, anything?
I just encourage people to learn themselves more and choose your journey for yourself, understand who you want to be the character of your story, and work towards that. And just pick and choose the piece for yourself versus allowing other people to steer you in a direction that's not natural to you.
Yes.
And it's okay to be vulnerable for women and men in the right circumstances. Understand your safety and trust yourself and your body and your intuition when it comes to things. There's this whole thing about like how women or people get butterflies when they're in love, or like when they first, oh, this is the one because I feel. But technically that's just your nervous system giving you the alarm that something may or may not be right, and you need to just kind of look into yourself and tap into yourself more and how you feel in certain circumstances. And is this going to result in, something good or bad for me, or good or bad for the person? Because it also it does affect your relationship with people when you are not in the right space that you need to be in yourself. So I just encourage people to do that self-work, encourage people to be by themselves. Like, do things by yourself. Take time for yourself. Understand you before you put that burden onto somebody else that might not be ready for it or can't help you.
And piggybacking off, a lot of the times the men get mad when I say that. I think a man should work on being the best version of self and then start dating, because naturally women have needs. And I tell a lot of times, I don't think most of the women are gold diggers. I think they're more stability diggers. I don't think a man waits till a woman learns how to respect him. We look for respect. Men don't go where we're tolerated. We go where we're celebrated. So I think as a culture, we have to learn how to, even in anger, control ourselves and not throw it in someone else's face based on how we feel. Because one bad conversation could completely detour the trajectory of your family and your friends and your relationship. So I would say, learn how to be vulnerable with yourself by being yourself. And the one thing I love about my mom also is my mother said, don't do nothing you're gonna be ashamed of. And if you're ashamed of it, it's because you shouldn't be doing it. So I'm gonna say that on record. Don't do nothing you're gonna be ashamed of, and if you are ashamed of it, it's because you know you shouldn't be doing it. And I think that's what we have to learn as a culture so we can move the culture forward. Vulnerability is healthy, and we gotta learn how to become healthy again. Anything else? Don't let that go over your head.